Now, I'm going to take it sort of even further by showing you, this one. In this particular case, start with a cricket. This is the sound of a cricket. This is the sound that I used. That's it. One sound file, it's 1 second long, and in this case, I don't even do pitch shifting on it. But when we bring it into here, and it's put through the right process, there's our ambience for our nighttime. Again, now it's panning. This one pans. Again, if this was full surround, it would be in full surround. And more to the point, because of the way games work, if somebody tomorrow comes up with technology that allows for 50.1 surround sound, Fmod just fills in all the gaps. It's because it's doing it in proper full surround. Now, this particular part, to do this in code, would be a little bit tricky to get the 3D stuff and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm messing with time. I'm not messing with pitch here. So I'm basically saying, play this sound, wait an amount of time, then play it again. And maybe they'll overlap. That's it. It really is that simple. So because if you listen, and you can't do this with every single creature, but if you listen to crickets, that's pretty much what crickets do. Bzz, 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 bzz. You know, you don't need to play around with it too much. If we move on to the next one, there's a slight variation here. And when I say slight, it is really slight. So with the frogs, in this case, I've got 4 sounds. That's one of the frog sounds. Now here, when we're talking subtle differences, please trust me, they are different, but on a microscopic level. However, that microscopic level is what makes the difference. And I'll give you the example of, I actually defy any of you to go out, get a ball and bounce a ball and get the exact same sound twice. You can't do it. So with this one, what we get is this effect. I spent 3 years living in Japan. The town that I lived in was full of rice fields where there were frogs. Again, trust me, this is exactly the sound that I heard at night. Again, from 4 tiny little sounds. If we swap the sounds over for the last one, in this particular case, the last one is just the sound of waves recorded with an underwater microphone. This will just go on forever. Now, the waves one is using 8 sounds, so obviously I'm expanding through each one of them. But we can do this with anything. We can do this, and in fact, I would almost insist that we should be doing this with anything that involves footsteps. Because having 2 footstep sounds, in fact, one of the things about playing Fallout 3 recently, I've got like this big companion giant mutant thing that follows me around. I think they've got 2 footstep sounds. Crunch, 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 crunch. It drives me nuts. I mean, this game's only been out in the last sort of 5 years. This is from Bethesda. That's a company that's got lots of money. It's like, oh, come on, guys. You can't fit in more than 2 footstep sounds? So again, putting some pitch variation on everything when you do it. Again, footstep sounds. I think these one. This is what it sounds like with 2 sounds with no variation. Now, how long before you all just went, yep, I can hear the repeating. That sounds terrible. This is with 4 sounds, but with, I think there's a little bit of volume variation in it, but only volume variation. There's one in there that sort of stands out a little bit. This one is with 8 sounds where there is pitch variation on each of the sound effects. Now remember, footsteps are really short. 8 of them doesn't take that much space. You're not going to notice it looping. In fact, you're not even going to notice the same sound playing twice, because by the time we get to 8, our brain's like, yeah, whatever, that's walking. But this is the point. Walking's not important, and yet we've made it important by giving it only 2 sounds instead of 4 or 6. And so we've made something that should just be sitting in the background that you should all be oblivious to stand out because there's only 2 sounds being used. All right. So this has been a really, really very quick look at some of the things to consider about when you're looking at your sound and thinking about your sound. Now, I'm going to keep going for a little bit longer. We're getting into lunchtime, but I'm going to allow some time for some questions, if people have questions. But I'm also going to allow, because I think I promised this on Twitter, for anybody who's paying attention, if anybody would like to actually say, oh, look, yeah, that's great, but I really want to know how you'd make this sound and how you'd make it work and how you'd make it small and all sort of stuff. If somebody really, really wants that, I'm quite happy. While I'm answering questions, I'll muddle through and assemble a sound just from the point of view of a demonstration of what you might start with and what you might assemble. So if somebody really wants to do that, I can do that while I'm answering some questions. There's no obligation on that at all. So what I want to leave you with is the idea that the sounds that you're putting in your games should never be an afterthought. Frankly, the earlier you think about sound, the better the results you'll get. The earlier you get in somebody else that is experienced in sound, the better the result you'll get. The other thing is that if you approach sound as being another useful tool of something that you can use to help tell your stories, help convince your audience of what they're experiencing is really, really effective. And I mean, we've all seen films and television where we've looked at the sound and we've looked at the thing and gone, wow, that's amazing. Quite often what happens is that really, really good sound, we don't notice. Because it doesn't stand out, it just supports the narrative, so we don't notice it. I just recently watched Game of Thrones, and there's two things about the sound in that's excellent. One, the script has been well written, but it has been delivered, and this is a sound thing obviously, the acting in that by some of the characters is outstanding. And that's part of the sound thing. It's part of how it's been delivered, how it's been edited. This is part of when you're talking about sound, you're including music, you're including sound effects, you're including dialogue, all right? Same with a lot of games. So it's one of those things where the people who are producing AAA games do pay attention to it. And I actually had a producer years ago say to me, oh, but why do you care that much about the sound? Having really good sound is not going to make a AAA game. I defy any of you to find me a AAA game that doesn't have really good sound. So I'll leave you with this thought. If you want to make AAA projects, and I'm not talking about giant multi-budget ones, I'm talking about something that is polished and handcrafted, then use the sound as a tool to your advantage rather than as an afterthought. Okay, so we'll leave some time for some questions, but apart from that, thank you very much, everyone.